Mufamadi, good evening and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mdluli, but I can't hear you that well.
I'm hoping that they will be helping us there technically to be able to raise the levels. How is that? Is that a little bit better for you?
I can hear you now.
Fantastic, great stuff. Now, Dr. Mufamadi, talk to me about, firstly, I mean, to start this conversation off, let's get straight to what we saw happening in Parliament yesterday. As far as the allegation that there is a judge or there are judges who could have been given money through Project Justice, the minister says, well, as far as she's concerned, up until this point, she has not received any such evidence presented to her to support that cause. But also, she says the allegations that were made by an informant who was discredited. Now, you yourself went to the commission and you testified to that effect, that, well, there's no evidence that was given to you as far as that is concerned. But information did come up during your panel investigation that certain amounts of money, I think 1.2 million, and in other instances 4.5 million was given to Minister Mahlobo to pass on to those sources. We also heard the acting DG testifying to that same effect. What do you make of the response of the minister in Parliament?
Mr. Mdluli, allow me to start here. You introduced me as a former Minister of State Security. No, I was Minister of Safety and Security.
Yes.
But also I need to point out one thing, that as you correctly said, I went to the commission to assist the commission to make sense of the report which was produced by a panel that I chaired, a panel that was appointed by President Ramaphosa. So I really don't have the responsibility to do running commentaries about what gets said every day, be it in Parliament or anywhere else. But I think it is important to make this point. The report which we submitted to President Ramaphosa, which has since become public, does say something about Parliament. There is a lot that went wrong during the period which was placed under review as a consequence of the appointment of the panel. Now, it is critically important for Parliament to rediscover a strategic vantage position from which to come at this issue. Yes, this is a multi-party institution, but it is a sovereign institution which bears the responsibility to make laws in the country. And it's important that it asks itself the question whether there is something they could have done as parliamentarians to avoid some of the wrong things that happened. Because if they continue to come at this issue as if it is fair game for party political contestation, I think they will lose the strategic perspective about what the role of Parliament should be, serving as a custodian of our Constitution to help avoid a recurrence of the problems that we are talking about.
Right.
This is the sense I picked up yesterday when I was listening to the debate in Parliament. I think they can do better than they are doing at the moment.
Now, when you were there at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, of course, as the chair of the high-level panel that was looking at matters at SSA, you put a caveat, I suppose, in one of your responses to say, as far as Project Justice is concerned, we've got to be circumspect and very vigilant and not be gullible, I think is the word that you used in our approach and in our assessment of this particular situation. Now, knowing what you know about the special unit that was operating at SSA and the information that was given to you, do you think that it is beyond the operations or the way that this particular unit could have operated that possibly the judiciary could have been bribed or implicated in some sort of way?
No, well, you know, if you look at the track record of our judiciary, it has acquitted itself so well, acting as a bulwark against the possible subversion of our constitutional order. It does not therefore mean that you might not have individuals who, shall I say, who are defective in their outlook. But we looked at the information which was brought to our attention. We scrutinized the documents that were made available to us. Indeed, we thought when we were looking at the specific projects that were carried out under the auspices of the Special Operations Unit, that we thought that there were various scenarios that you have to look at. The possibility that indeed those projects existed, but also there was a possibility that some of the projects could have been conceptualized as a ruse for hiving of money from the state coffers, which is why we thought that it was important to put that caveat to our report and say, please approach some of these issues with utmost caution until such time that when you carry out investigations that we recommended should be carried out, you find evidence backing up some of the claims that were made. Please don't rush into throwing conclusions.
A forensic investigation into these allegations, is that part of your recommendations?
Well, I wouldn't want to put that adjective about forensic, but however these matters get investigated, as long as the investigations are thorough and done by people who are qualified to carry out those investigations, that is what we recommended should happen.
Now, and I want to put this question to you, and I'll tell you what's the reason why I'm asking you this question. I'm not necessarily asking you to comment on a particular minister or a particular DG, but I want you to look at it as a citizen of South Africa. You say the reason why, for example, you went to the commission is to assist the commission, one. But the second reason why you went to the commission is because after releasing your report, I think it was out in the public domain for 2 years or so, you would have expected a more high level of civic vigilance to be displayed, where citizens would actually engage with that report in its seriousness. And of course, it's something that you didn't see happen. Now, why am I going to ask you the question? Is because we want, as citizens, to be aware of what is going on currently in government. But I'll put that question to you when we come back from the break. Do stay with us. That is the former Safety and Security Minister and former chairperson of the High-Level Review Panel in the State Security Agency, Dr. Sydney Mufamadi. He stays with us when we come back from the break. Do stay on. Back with us here on the news feed late night, and in conversation with Dr. Sydney Mufamadi, he joins us to unpack issues that we have been seeing, of course, unfolding at the State Security Agency. That whole preamble, Dr. Mufamadi, was, of course, to ask you this question. Is there still a fire that is raging behind closed doors at SSA? I tell you why. Just moments before the acting DG goes to testify, we learned that, of course, there was counsel and lawyers who were going to oppose his testimony coming from the minister. Yesterday, we hear the minister saying these words, that the DG decided to go to the commission without conferring with the minister was who has direct control rather over the department, including the DG himself, is something way beyond my control. That he decided to disrespect my authority and go directly to the commission is something that is beyond my control. Is there a fire that is raging behind closed doors at the state security? And should, as citizens who should exercise hyper-vigilance, be concerned right now when we are seeing this play out in the public?
Mr. Mdluli, I don't work at SSA. I was appointed to chair a panel which was looking at SSA during a particular, in terms of what it did during a particular period. But the important thing earlier is that we have a parliamentary system. People who are deployed to work in that system, irrespective of the party they come from, must do some collective introspection looking at whether the system is robust enough to enable them to do carry out their oversight responsibilities over the work of government departments, including the SSA. When the DG is invited by a commission of inquiry into the work of his department, he has indeed a statutory obligation to respond positively to such an invitation. None of the people who are sitting in positions of responsibility, if they have a view about the issues that are being discussed at the commission, should use platforms elsewhere to respond to what is being discussed at the commission. If, for instance, you have a minister of government or a speaker of parliament, chairperson of a portfolio committee in parliament who has got some wisdom to share with the commission, they can approach the commission and ask for permission to come and assist the commission. You don't have noises that are being made outside the commission by people who actually have the correct standing in society to go to the commission and assist the commission.
Now, again, in that spirit of the hyper-vigilance and sensitivity of civil society, the question that I'm putting to you is do we need to get to a point where we appoint a panel, or there's a forensic investigation, or there is a commission of inquiry before we actually find out what is really going on behind closed doors? Because as society, for example, we are unable to have that inside information, right? So if you, for example, should we look at events that have been happening in recent times? You've got one of those events which I've mentioned around the contestation between the acting DG and the minister. We've got, for example, cases that have been going on in our courts, right? One of the former ministers, now the courts granting him a Section 174, that application becoming successful. And he comes out and he says, well, I've always been saying all along these charges put up against me were a we're politically motivated. In other words, there are political factions that would like to see me out of the position that I'm in, and therefore they are bringing up these trumped-up charges. Or, for example, we hear coming out of our courts that the hawks were used in a family dispute by people who were somewhat very powerful, and they managed to get hawks outside of their jurisdiction and come and arrest people in another jurisdiction. We look at some of these things. As the innocent public outside, should we be concerned that our institutions are still being weaponized in political battles?
Well, you know, the examples you are giving are quite instructive. The matter of how the DG for State's Security Agency came to be at the commission was discussed at the commission. The minister briefed lawyers to go and her, and the matter was ventilated in full view of the public, and there was an adjudication on the basis of which a way forward was found. Now, you are also talking about the case against Member of Parliament, Mr. Bong. That matter was before the courts. People will have views about what exactly are the underlying causes of what we see coming before our institutions and so on. But at the end of the day, we have a functioning judiciary. We have a functioning legal system which people have recourse to. And at the end of the day, we must go by what the due process of the law produced as outcomes. I wouldn't really want us to seek to operate on the basis of conspiracy theories when we have the possibility for allegations that are made against people to be tested by a competent court of law.
So, so you're saying as long as, I mean, from what I'm hearing, we can still have matters being ventilated in our courts and properly so, and on platforms like the Commission, that should give citizens of this country some level of confidence that our institutions, though vulnerable, are still protected somehow?
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think we still need to ask ourselves whether, as the citizens, we are doing enough to hold our public representatives accountable for what they do when they are serving in these institutions. That's a question that we need to pose to ourselves, and that speaks to the notion that you raised earlier about the need for us not to lower our guard, but to be forever vigilant.
Now, of course, this is an ongoing debate in our constitutional democracy that is characterized by organization winning the elections. They select who will go to Parliament. It's not us who certainly even choose the president, right? And how this constitutional democracy functions. And the question is, what do we do to ensure that our institutions are not susceptible to political influence and political infighting? What is your suggestion on how we do that? For example, I mean, you were talking at the Commission about officials who feel they might not have a tool that they can use. For example, if they see that I'm being forced to do something that is wrong here by someone who is probably very powerful in politics, but I have no place where I can go and ventilate this. unless you give me a tool or you empower me to be able to say, when I see this happen, then I can raise an alarm bell and I'll be supported, then I would probably use that. What do we do to ensure that our institutions, like the intelligence, are not susceptible to political influence?
Well, as I said, the people get a government which they deserve. The public representatives we are talking about were elected by us. And if the distance between us as the electorate and the people we have elected is too big for our comfort, it then must mean that perhaps we need to have a relook at our electoral system. Because our electoral system must be such that it guarantees that our elected representatives remain tethered to their constituencies. So that is something that we might have to look at very, very closely. But at the same time, how do you explain that when you have a constitutional democracy and you have people who have taken an oath of office in which they say, I undertake to uphold the law, the Constitution of the Republic and all its other laws, suddenly you find that these people have got a fraught relationship with the Constitution. You find that they are disdainful of the judiciary. You find that they make it their business to rail against people who are in authority, but they themselves are also, as I said, public representatives. And they are allowed to do this with impunity. I'm saying that these are the things that the public must guard against. These are the things that the public must pose the question: are our institutions robust enough to hold such deviant personalities in check? You are asking me, how do we do it? I'm saying the first responsibility we have is to know that we have to do it. How we do it is a question of detail.
Appreciate your time tonight. That is the former Safety and Security Minister and former chairperson of the High-Level Review Panel into State Security Agency, Dr. Sydney Mufamadi.